Hello, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Football Kit Memories, the podcast that gets under the shirt. Today I meet the thinking man's footballer, Mr. Pat Nevin. During the podcast, Pat talks about his new book, The Accidental Footballer, as he reflects on his time growing up in Glasgow, being part of an academic family, and his somewhat reluctant path to becoming a professional footballer. Pat was so generous with his time, sharing so many incredible stories, that I wanted to break this podcast into two parts and make sure you got to hear everything that he shared with me. Here in part one, Pat talks about his time with Chelsea, reflecting on his first season in 1983-84 through the choice of the home shirt the Blues wore in that promotion season from Division 2. We also cover Pat's move to Everton following Chelsea's relegation in 1988. There we discuss the difficulties in maintaining a winning but ageing team, and there's a sliding doors moment for Pat as he mulls over a potential move to PSG. Part 2 arrives on Monday, where Pat discusses Scotland and his next two football shirt choices. Be sure to follow Football Kit Memories wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss it. I really do hope you enjoy this as much as I did. Welcome to Football Kit Memories. Okay, so today on the podcast, I'm really delighted to say I'm joined by the thinking man's footballer. It's the very cerebral Pat Nevin. How you doing, Pat?
I'm fine. Thanks for the intro. It's not the first time I've had that intro. It's been a lifetime trying to get away from that intro. And the more I say, no, I'm not like that, people go, yeah, you must be dead clever if you say you're not. Oh, you can't win.
Well, only clever people write books, Pat, and you've just written a book.
I wrote that a wee while ago, and
right.
It took a surprisingly short amount of time to write.
Okay.
I think it was 3 weeks to write 120,000 words.
Wow.
But I had the ideas in my mind anyway. I wanted to do it a different way, because there's a lot of footballers do books about their life and their career and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But simply, I didn't want to go to a publisher, and I certainly didn't want anyone ghosting it.
Right.
So I just wrote it, edited it, and then took it to a publisher and said, fancy this?
Wow.
And they went, yeah, all right. So it's been a while, since I finished it, but I love the process of actual writing, because I'd never looked back, and that's the big thing.
Yeah.
You don't look back. You always look forward.
Right.
And then when I stopped playing, I had other things to do, so I kept on looking forward.
Yeah.
And then it was only the last couple of years, somebody did something to annoy me, and I'm not easy annoyed.
Okay.
Easily annoyed. And my reaction to being annoyed was to get out the laptop and hammered away. And it was, so I'm very happy with that person for annoying me.
Fantastic. Okay. And does that person know that you were the kind of catalyst for the book, or?
No, the reason why I've been vague about it is because that's the prologue to the book.
Okay. Right.
So yes, that person probably doesn't know.
Okay. Interesting.
But the concept being, life has changed, and life will always change. But I was beginning to see too many things that disinterested me, such as, like the simple concept of Twitter. In 140 characters, you ain't going to find much about people, right?
Yep.
If we're just going online and all we're doing is getting hit with these things that last 35 seconds or a minute, I'm much more interested in long form, hearing a little bit more about people. So that other side doesn't interest me. Now, it may make me or some of us outsiders, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go into the depth about things and try and find real reasons, as opposed to looking for a simplistic A or B stroke black and white answer.
Yeah.
More nuanced. So I thought, no, sod that. I'm going to write something that's, a bit more nuanced, explaining things that you don't. Currently, classically, there's so many things out there in the world just now where people are, you either like that or hate that.
Right.
You're for him and against her.
It's extremes kind of thing.
But life isn't like that. We're not binary. Life isn't binary. So I decided, no, I'm just going to write how I felt. And so it was great. In the end, I started annoyed, and within 2 chapters, I was loving it. So I got to look back.
Amazing. So what are kind of key themes? Is it an autobiography, or is it?
It's kind of a biography to some degree, but it's not normal.
Right. Okay.
As it wouldn't be. And it's hooked all. I mean, you'll see my career in there. You hear about my career in there because people would like to know that.
Yeah.
So I'm told.
Yes.
I've never thought they would be interested in knowing it. But I've never wanted to do that. And I kind of held off doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
But then I came up with a concept of hanging the story of sort of what had happened to me in my life around something else. And
Okay.
the something else is being an utter outsider within the industry that I worked in,
Right.
industries that I worked in. And if there's maybe, there's hopefully a number of messages in there. Certainly one of the messages is it's okay to be different. It's okay to be an outsider. You will find in many areas of life, work, whatever, you can be, if you're not towing the party line and being the normal, you can feel as if you can't succeed.
Yeah.
And I believe that is massively wrong. And a lot of people, and you certainly, not me, but in many areas of the world, that if you have your own thinking, that can sometimes think to new thinking. It can sometimes think to breakthroughs. So the concept of, hey, everybody, I don't care where you are, you're an outsider, you can do it. Life can actually be quite fun. And here's how I managed it, kind of thing.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like that kind of theme of being an outsider is really interesting. You grew up in Easterhouse, which I gather is quite a kind of a rough scheme in Glasgow, in the east end of Glasgow. Do you always feel like you kind of broke the mold and you were different to how people thought you should be as a young male at that time?
That's a brilliant question. Absolutely great question. Yes, to some degree, but it wasn't affected. It was just my family. It's a purely a family thing. I'm one of 6 kids, and a mum and dad who brought us up in this fairly earnest kind of way, moralistic. The family was religious, although I'm not religious, and it was kind of, the morality was more important than the religiosity,
Right.
and I think that thing of you trying to do your best, it's not accepted to do anything more than maximize your potential at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why you do something is to be good at it, and also to give something back to whatever part of society that is.
Yeah.
Now that sounds like pretty highfalutin stuff, and that would think almost of me retrofitting my life. It wasn't like that. That's exactly what it was like. I didn't retrofit. That's what my mum and dad were like.
Right.
And it was not fair. I mean, my dad particularly, both of them for a variety of reasons, but my dad, I mean, he'd take me training every single day, from the age of 4 or 5 onwards, and would give that to any of the kids that wanted it,
Right.
my brothers, etc. And if I said no, then fine. But it was always there, and I was the kid that kept on going. I was kept training. Now he'd done coaching courses. He'd been a boxer of his own in his own side.
Okay.
The other thing he did was he took the school teams. He also took the boys' club teams in the local area, and he helped build what was the Easterhouse League, which was a huge thing, really huge.
Okay.
Under 11s to under 18s, sometimes 15 or 20 teams at each level. That's a lot of kids, and it was a major thing when gang warfare was going on.
Of course.
My dad helped set this up. So why would you do that if you're a working man, leaving the house at, 5:30, 6 in the morning, don't go home until 5, rush down your dinner, train me, if not training me, get out, training the kids, taking them to gyms and things like that,
right,
working on the school teams, taking the school teams, taking the boys. Why do you do that? Why does my mum then clean all the strips of all the kids of all these different teams? She does. They don't take them home. It's all done in a. We live in the top of the tenement, and she's hanging out the washing down there, like watching it, make sure it's not getting nicked.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? You don't do this. No, you do it because you're altruistically helping society.
Yeah.
In the midst of, there was lots of good people around in tough areas. But there was nobody else like that doing that. So I come from a family that's got this very different outlook from others around us. So if you're brought up with that, people go, it must have been weird being a footballer, being different. I'm thinking, no, we were different always.
You're always different. That's interesting.
And I'm the family failure because I didn't get a degree. I didn't finish my degree. Everyone else got one.
Is that true?
Yeah, complete family failure, right? and it's really funny when you put that up, 6 kids in a tenement in Easterhouse.
Yeah.
All 6 going to higher education or whatever. That's not because we're great. That's the parents. That's the
Right.
parents who gave us every opportunity. Didn't drill it into us for pure. Yes, the education was important, but so was sport, so was health, so was altruism towards the community, and politics with a small p.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, look, the book sounds really, really interesting, Pat. I'm really looking forward to reading that. We're going to kind of come onto your playing career in a moment when we go through your 3 football shirts you've chosen. But I wanted to ask you as well, kind of when you finished playing, you're involved with Motherwell for a time, and then you went into media, and you've become very successful in the media industry, a kind of like a second wind kind of career kind of thing. Was that always the plan, or it just happened by accident?
I've never had a plan. I've never had a moment's plan. The only plan I had was to become a teacher, and I failed.
A teacher.
My classic. Well, the only reason why I failed is because I ended up. I suppose the other line would be I tried really hard not to be a professional footballer and failed. So, which is my kind of position on it, and it's a much closer to the truth than you would believe that. So, from then, I ended up getting into football. I've just kind of done what I do. So,
Yeah.
but you had a football career, 19 years. In the midst of it, I was doing other things while I was doing it. I was chairman of the PFA in England.
Right.
I was already writing. I mean, I started when I was 20, 21. I was writing for NME, art magazines, then, through my life, I'd written for various newspapers. I've been fortunate to write from everyone from the Times and the Telegraph to the Mail on Sunday to the Indie to the Guardian.
Right.
I've had columns for many newspapers as well. So I kind of, while I was playing, thinking, I kind of like the idea of getting into journalism. Walk out at the end of my career, having done 19 years. In fact, it was 21 when you add the extra 2 years at Motherwell.
Yep.
And then for the first time ever, I think, I've not got a job. But in reality, I'd actually been probably 2 years already working for Channel 5 TV,
Right.
doing the UEFA Europa League, UEFA Cup coverage.
Thursday night, Channel 5.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd kind of started with them, and I ended up doing 8 or 9 years.
Right.
And then I never asked them; they asked me. And then in Radio 5 Live, I started working stuff on and off for them. 96 Euro 96.
Right.
I never got the squad. I was a bit miffed.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Understandably so. So I'd kind of done that, but had much like my football career, I'd never thought I'm going to go into media. I kind of liked the idea of writing, but other than that, I really didn't know. And then what happened when I left Motherwell, I just got a number of offers and never contracted. I don't do contracts. I just do. If you like working with me, work with me. If you want to tell me to get lost, I'll go. I'll get on. Now, I know I'm in a very fortunate position where you make a few quid during your professional career. Now, I'm not a multi-millionaire. I wasn't in football where the big money was.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to do things I love doing.
Yeah.
And then if it ever came to the point where I have to really knuckle down and, find a real job, I'll do it,
What I ask everybody on the podcast, and it's going to be slightly different for you because you are a footballer of some repute. What do football shirts mean to you, and do they mean anything at the time as a player?
It's a weird one because as a kid they did.
Right.
You really did as a kid. So amazingly, my first shirt I ever bought was now think about it, youngster, 7 years of age, Celtic supporter.
Yep.
In Easter House. First shirt, Chelsea.
Oh,
that's weird because it's blue.
Yes, very strange. Very strange. How did that go down?
Confused looks. But I made sure I wore it with the shorts and the socks.
Right. Okay.
Blue and white. That meant Chelsea. Now I was quite enamoured by them. So I can remember my first football shirt that I bought, and it was that. And I think next one I tried to get a Brazil shirt, and then eventually I gave up and went for the hooped classic.
Nice.
Celtic had at a time. But it's kind of odd because football shirts kind of did mean something. You wanted to show it off all the time as a kid. I think the time when they always meant something to me, but when I went to Celtic Boys Club, when I was about 10 or 11, no, I was 12 actually, I was 12.
Right.
We wore, and this is sacrilege. I mean, anyone who loves football shirts, almost put your fingers in your ears now, because this is actually going to be physically painful, what I'm going to tell you now. So we would play, so as bits of kids at Barrafield on this red blaze, we would play for Celtic Boys Club with the green and white hoops, right?
Yep.
But these were the hand-me-down first team shirts.
Wow.
We played with some wearing Jinky's shirt.
You're kidding.
That's what they did, and the shorts.
Wow.
I told you this would hurt. This is physically painful.
Wow.
Actually, even I think back about it, it's actually spine tingling. They didn't realise there was any value in a lot of these kits. And particularly when we went to the older age groups, because they would fit us better. You get these, and I can remember these beautiful cotton shirts with the numbers obviously on the shorts.
Yeah.
That's what they did. You're 7 or a 9 on the short. And you think, Kenny was wearing this recently. But to save a few quid, they just handed them down to the boys' club.
Well, that's very Celtic, isn't it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, biscuit tin style. But we thought it was not. And in many ways, it is actually perfectly reasonable at the time, because, they're used, move them on. Football strips never became that sort of collectible thing till a long time later.
Yeah.
So, because people didn't swap shirts, all that sort of stuff in those days. So, and the downside of that is, I then didn't really care about any other shirts, because I had the shirt that I wanted and I was wearing it every week. So I didn't look for other shirts then. And maybe then there was a big gap between then and a professional career. And then you thought, playing against international teams where you could swap a shirt, or the teams you actually played for, those shirts became important as well. So that's when it was. I mean, I could out hipster most of you with some of the shirts I could go into. But I won't do it. I mean, I love, if I was into the style ones, I mean, the original Diego Maradona Boca one. I mean, really. Wow. I mean, seriously. I mean, you can hang about in Dalston with that. I mean, it's
definitely.
So, but it was nothing for me. I never played against them, so it couldn't have an effect on me.
Right. So, Pat, you just showed me a box that you found. You said you found it 6 months ago of shirts that you kind of haven't been through in 25 years.
Well, exactly, because I didn't keep memorabilia. I never have. If I got something, I usually give it away to a charity immediately.
Yeah.
It's better than sitting in a black bin liner in my
course.
So I gave loads away. A classic one, again. Maybe one shirt that I always wanted was the Brazil shirt, because my age, 1978, I was 7, and you look at Brazil, you go, oh my God. And that was when football just exploded in my head, the 70 World Cup, watching, Pele and all that. Anyway, scroll forward quite a few years later, maybe nearly 20 years later, I'm in the squad for Scotland against Brazil.
Wow.
Now, annoyingly, I don't get on. However, I don't care. I'm going to swap a shirt. So I swap a shirt, right? So I've got, finally, a real international Brazil shirt. And that meant something to me. There was a journalist who was good friends with me who just came up to me and he said, that is all I've ever wanted in my life, one of those shirts.
Right.
And he had these big pleading eyes on. And I went, I know, but I've kind of wanted it too. He goes, no, but please, I just, it's all I've ever wanted. I'd put it up and I'd have it in a big, frame right behind my desk. And I went, it's all I've ever wanted in my entire life. And I just weakened and went, oh, sod it, and gave him it. So I just gave him it, right? Anyway, the killer of that is, I talked to him about 5 years later and I said, you still got that shirt up? And he went, no, I gave it away.
What? Oh, dear.
Would you believe, and this will shock quite a lot of people, I'm still very good friends with that.
Yes.
And that individual's gym trainer.
Is it really? Interesting.
Trainer, if you're listening, I remember that. Not always the most popular guy around Scotland just now, but I got on very well with him.
He's a very interesting character, a huge force in Scottish football. Mm-hmm. So, Pat, let's move on. Let's go for your first shirt. So you've chosen the Chelsea home shirt, 83-84 by Le Coq Sportif. This was your first season at Chelsea, right?
Yeah. Purely I was very lucky. I got Player of the Year. It was
my first great season.
We won the league to get promotion up to the Premier League, which Chelsea had been in a bad place before then. And it was a kind of magical year, a really fantastic year. I still wasn't convinced I wanted to be a professional footballer full time, but it seemed to be going quite well. But the shirt itself, weirdly, it's blue, it's silky, it's skin tight, even for a skinny wee rake like me. It's got a little pinstripe red and white through it. So for someone who's in Scotland, people have to understand I'm very green and white. You know, I was a Celtic fan, I'm now a Hibby.
Yep.
So I'm very green and white. But in England, I'm absolutely blue and white. You know, absolutely blue and white. I mean, Everton and Chelsea, you know, very blue and white.
Yep.
Tranmere as well, blue and white. So, but that strip, and if you go to Chelsea now, and go to a game now that's a long time ago. And how many strips have they had since then? I would say just about the most common retro strip that's used is that one. And I find that amazing because I'd worn a retro strip of Chelsea's from the 70s.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the classic. And I suppose it all depends when you grow up. But a lot of Chelsea fans of certainly a certain age, but I'm noticing that younger Chelsea fans now, that's the one that they go to because it's something beautiful, classy, silky. It's memories of a kind of simpler time as well. And it doesn't actually have there's not a Gulf Air or anything emblazoned across the front. There is no sponsorship at all. And it's a cracker. It's just a cracker. And I'll be honest with you, it's one of the few strips in my playing career as a player for a team. I stole the strip at the end of the season. They didn't give you it. People don't get this. Players get loads of strips these days. It's not your strip. I might be wearing 7 this week and 9 next week and 10 next week.
Oh, really?
12 the week afterwards. It's not my strip.
Right.
So I don't get the right to keep it at the end of the season. By the way, there are only 3. There's your home kit, the away kit, and there's a short sleeve.
Right. Okay.
So if you rip it, somebody will sew it up.
You're kidding? Even then in the 80s?
Yeah. Early 80s, that's the way it was. That's just before the change.
Yeah.
More strips started coming in. So there was no concept that strip belongs to you. Now, I wore the number 7 every week.
Yeah.
Probably out of the 60 games, I wore it for 58 of them now. If I was pushed and I had a strip left, and there's probably that box, I don't know, 50 in there, that's the one I keep. If Desert Island strips, that's the one I grab.
That's your favourite.
And I think it's for Chelsea fans. They would. I've shown it to Chelsea fans once or twice.
Yeah.
Jaw drops. It's like Kerry Dixon's 9 or my 7. It's a kind of special kind of thing, apparently.
Yeah.
I love that strip. I just dearly love it, and it still kind of fits me. It's just good.
So I was going to ask you, Pat, like joining Chelsea at the time, I guess like it's a completely different club nowadays to what it was. You joined in the 2nd division, and like you said, you had an amazing season. What was it like coming from Glasgow to London and playing for a club like Chelsea?
That was really quite cool about it. There was no pressure on me, no expectations. I just took a 2-year sabbatical for my degree.
Right.
I was going to go and do 2 years at Chelsea and go back up the road, finish my degree.
Okay.
It's complicated. That's why I wrote a book about it, to explain that. You know, I didn't want to be a footballer. It's not because I didn't love football. I absolutely loved playing, probably more than anyone else. You know, I'm the only one that's staying back for training, coming back in the afternoons on my own.
Right.
I love the technical stuff. I was fanatical. Fitness was a distance runner as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's all those things. It always surprises people because I never told them. Why should I? Because that just gives away one of my secrets, which is if I can't beat you with skill, I'll run the legs off you, mate. Yeah. People didn't know that.
Well, Strachan says the same in his book, doesn't he? Strachan's a big believer in long distance running as well when he was a player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Strachan and I have got quite a lot of things in common,
right.
Obviously. But that kind of feeling of, right, okay, love doing this, absolutely fantastic. Cruise along. If you do the best you can possibly do, nice things will happen. If you muck about too much, then it probably won't happen for you. but desperation to be famous, to be wealthy, all that stuff. Nothing. I had no feeling for that. None at all. But I love doing it. So those 2 years, when I went down there, it was just a bit of fun. I'll be honest with you, there was very little expectation for me that I'd get in the first team. I didn't think I would get in the first team. So, I was 19, and Charlie and Nick went down the same week from Celtic to Arsenal.
Yeah.
Blaze of glory. Nobody heard them. Nobody obviously heard of me. I'm going for Clyde, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
So that was good for me. But I was, just as training went on for a wee while, I just thought, actually, I don't know if these guys are any better than me.
Right.
That's how it kind of dawned on me. I went, actually, this is all right. I can cope with this.
Yeah.
And, it was only a month or two in to going down. I got a chance in the first team instead.
Wow.
Never went out. And that's from someone who didn't expect, and no one really expected to get in the first team much, if at all, for a few years, because you're only a kid.
Yeah.
I was 95 grand across buttons anyway.
Right.
To at the end of the season getting player of the year was a bit of a shock. But it was a kind of shock because within a year after that, we were challenging to win the league.
Yeah.
The top league. And that's a massive, massive shift. So we had a good team built very, very quickly.
Right.
So what was it like going down there? Well, the football was brilliant and fun. I was given complete freedom, which was unusual in the 80s game, which was a bit of hit and run a lot of the time with most teams. And we were quite a stylish, skillful side as well.
Yeah.
So football was great. I'm going to gigs when I can afford it all the time there as well, which was also brilliant fun. And if you're 19, 20, if you're brought up in Glasgow, city life is city life. You just like city.
Yeah.
And I'm in central London. The best thing I did was I absolutely made sure I stayed in London. Now, none of the rest of the players stayed in London. They all stayed out by Watford or out in... The reason why they did that is because a lot of them were married, settled down, or were having children or that. So they were having that type of life. I'm saying, sod that. I'm living in West End, man. Of course, you can only... So I was Elscourt, then Pimlico, then South Ken.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For a while. Each of those, you're talking, that sounds really impressive, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, they're DOS houses kind of thing, like
Plus one has fleas, right? So I met anyway. So I was having, I have to say, a brilliant time. Love it time. I was missing my friends. I'd left the degree course, which I had been loving, and my best friends were college mates. But good news is they still are. So that never changed.
And it worked out. So you had quite a few years at Chelsea, and then you moved to Everton when they got relegated, right? I've read that PSG was sniffing around you as well. Is that true?
Yeah, I'd agreed. To go to PSG.
Wow.
I was quite calm about it, so that was all going to happen. And then just Everton came in at the last minute and asked me if I wanted to go, and I went, yeah, all right. That was it. That was a negotiation.
Everton were a really good side at the time, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they just won the league, but they were aging.
Right.
And what they needed to do. And it was kind of complicated because they had to go and basically replace a lot of the people that were there who were getting on a bit. And they brought in people like me and Tony Crotty and Martin Keown and Stuart McCall, a lot of decent players. Norman Whiteside came out at the time. So problem is you're upsetting the apple cart with the original guys who weren't hoofed out,
Right.
There was a schism, and the schism kind of broke the club a little bit, which was a real shame because the quality of players there was absolutely phenomenal, really phenomenal. But it's not that's quite normal. That happens a lot in football. You go and put 20 odd people together who are all inverted commas winners, who are all people who expect the best of themselves and want the job and want to be the best, and they're not always going to go on. It's just normal. I mean, trying to get from the outside, people talk about team spirit and why can't you just build a team spirit? You have no idea how complicated that is with such complex characters that are all expecting to be the number one, or close to the number one. And that was one of the most interesting things I found about working within that industry. As an outsider, watching them voyeuristically, I found that an incredible thing. I mean, the first book I wrote about 20 odd years ago was psychology. And it was mostly about that. This one's much more fun.
Okay.
But it's a very interesting area. So it was a good time, Everton managed to get a cup final, scored the win on the couple of semis, all that sort of stuff. But in reality, I've been player of the year twice at Chelsea. My expectations of myself then were to do the same at Everton.
Right.
And of course, what anybody who's of a certain age won't know, a young age won't know, moving from Chelsea to Everton was a massive step up. You wouldn't be considered that now.
Of course.
But then it's a step up. They're only as, at the time it was either Liverpool, Manchester United or Everton.
Right.
I'd have said they were the only step ups that I could have made in British football and Scottish. Taking Scottish football out of, obviously, with Celtic and Rangers being different.
Yeah.
And I'd already, Celtic had tried to buy me twice already.
Okay.
So it really was a kind of no-brainer going to Everton. And there was lots of good times there, but there's always a but with Everton in the time there, because I'd like to have done a lot better. I mean, I played a lot of games and scored a few goals and got to cup final, that sort of stuff. But the expectation of myself would have been to get player of the year and win trophies. And we came very close.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you say, there's so many factors outside of your control. It's not just how good you can be and dedicated you are. There's so many other things that influence that, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's an intriguing thing about football. I was talking to Brian McClare the other day.
Right.
You said, you heard that I could have been PSG. I'll get this thing, I'd ask, and please try it with every footballer you talk to, because they'll all tell you a different story. What's your alternative career?
Right.
And the alternative career is who you could have signed for when you signed for one club. Because we all think of your career set in stone. It's not. So mine's would have been, so Celtic, when I left them as an S form, the teams that came into me from were I stopped playing football for a while, but Airdrie, Partick Thistle, Ipswich Town, all of which I kind of turned down because I didn't want to play football professionally. But I then went to Clyde. Now, from Clyde, I had a choice between Dundee United and Chelsea. So I chose Chelsea. So people wouldn't know that. Chelsea, it was PSG or Everton. So I chose Everton. Inter Milan were sniffing around as well.
Wow.
But Everton was a no-brainer. So after Everton, the choice was a number of teams. West Ham had come in, but Everton wouldn't let me go there. It ended up being Galatasaray or Tranmere Rovers, which is a weird choice to make. And if you think of your life, there's no reason why your life wouldn't have went that way, because it nearly did. I was in the absolute cusp of signing for Gala. And, and Hakan Suka was centre forward. And they had made me this massive promise to play me in my real position, which I'd rarely played in my entire career.
Where that is, as a number 10?
Yeah, I was always a 10. So
right.
I'd never played in the wing before I went down south. So, and I didn't really like playing in the wing.
Okay.
It's a kind of weird thing to have a whole career of it, but that's not unusual. That's quite common in the game.
Yeah.
Or it was then. Less so now if you look at the players, for instance, David Silva or that, they
fashions change.
That wide, but they can move in.
So there you have it. Massive thanks to Pat for sharing his football kit memories with me. Don't forget part 2, where we discuss Scotland, and Pat's final football shirt choices is out on Monday. You can follow me, my own collection, on Instagram, or get in touch via Twitter or email. Make sure you follow Pat on Twitter and check out The Accidental Footballer, which is available now. The music you heard was produced by Evil Ed. Check out his music on Bandcamp. Not quite sure if Pat's a firm. There's links to everything in the notes section. And finally, thanks for listening. If you have enjoyed it, please do spread the word. Give me a follow on social and subscribe to Football Kit Memories on the podcast player of your choice. And other than that, I'll catch you Monday.